Do you believe that America as a country is cursed by environmental entities because we refuse to be educated by the New World? Um, I mean, I could give you the standard answer that I don't believe in the supernatural and that's ridiculous and yada, yada, yada. But of course, I believe that. In my bones, I believe that. I mean, have you seen my fucking movie? America is a haunted house. Hey, folks, happy December. Hope you've had a good 2025. I haven't. No, I mean, I have and I haven't. It's been kind of a rough year in a lot of ways, just because of current events. But I think actually the channel is doing quite well. You know, we hit 500,000 subscribers this year. Did a Frozen 50s Man episode this year. Went to Maine and did a big travelogue with my buddy Benton. Sort of dove into the Revolutionary War, which has been a lot of fun. Did a big sort of Frankenstein video essay that I really enjoyed and I'm very proud of. And I've been plugging away at my new film, The Vampires of New Orleans. It's a docudrama with educational and narrative elements, so we've shot a lot of the documentary portions, which are really juicy. And then basically right as soon as we get back to work after, you know, the Christmas, New Year's break, we're diving right into starting to shoot the kind of narrative, the drama part of the docudrama, which is gonna be really incredible. And I really think that this is just beyond anything that we've done before. And I don't want to say too much more because I want to keep you in suspense, but I really think you're going to like it. So for today's Q&A, I'm going to start with questions from my generous patrons. If you appreciate what I do here, please sign up to patreon.com/Atun-Shei Films. Join us there. You can get access to behind the scenes posts, an exclusive Discord server, extra videos, all sorts of perks, and it is the single most important thing that kind of keeps this channel running. So without any further ado, let's hop right into it. Actually, one thing briefly before we get to the questions. There actually ended up being way too many for one video, so I actually cut together a whole bonus Q&A video, which is available exclusively over on my Patreon. So if you'd like to see me, tackle such edifying topics such as AI, Ken Burns' Revolutionary War documentary, or Morbid Zoo's treacherous video that you made about me, daring to criticize me and my opinions of Frankenstein, then please hop on over to Atun-Shei Films at patreon.com/Atun-Shei Films. That's right. There's also actually a ton of other extra videos that I posted recently at that same tier that are sneak peeks of my film. So anyway, let's get back to it. You suddenly wake up in the 17th century on a ship headed for New England. All you have is period-appropriate clothing and enough money for 3 days' worth of food. How long could you survive before being accused of witchcraft? I would survive decades. As soon as we landed, I would use the money to bribe the bosun to look the other way while I stole all of the muskets and powder on board. And then, depending on when in the century I was landing, I would march my ass immediately to the nearest indigenous settlement, give the guns out like candy, and make it my mission in life to murder every single white man, woman, and child on the eastern seaboard of the continent. And then, of course, I would make friends with the dragon and rally all the clans together. And then Stephen Lang would come by in like a big gunship. And I would like fly down on my dragon with a machine gun and go rah! And like shoot all the guys and they go and then Stephen Lang would fight me in a big mech suit, but I would of course be victorious, and Twitter wouldn't exist, so nobody could call me a white savior. It'd be great. Why do you think that there is such a high level of infatuation for the Civil War but not nearly as much for the American Revolution? Is it because it was just longer ago, or was it the lack of a lost cause mythology from the British/loyalists, or is my entire premise wrong? So I was actually kind of surprised by the underwhelming reaction to my foray into the American Revolution earlier this year. It's kind of unfortunate. I think people are really only interested in the American Revolution as far as they can use it as a political prop. Whereas I think the Civil War has salient sort of political dimensions that are relevant to politics today, but also has this sort of wealth of like material culture that's sort of more kind of reminiscent of like what you'd find in World War II, right? Where it's kind of like more industrial and there's like a little bit, there's sort of a little bit more going on. Whereas, with the Revolutionary War, it's just like, okay, here's a flintlock, here's another flintlock. It's like not that, it's comparatively, not as sort of exciting, I suppose, to somebody whose kind of main interest is in kind of technical details and mechanics, which I think for better or for worse is sort of most lay people's kind of like entry point into military history, if that makes sense. What was your first historical interest once you grew out of the all wars all the time mindset most young men interested in history tend to start from? Being from Eugene Debs' hometown, mine was the history of the American labor movement. That's too fucking real, man. I would say probably my first interest outside of military history was probably the Old West, but I think that's also kind of young man coded. So, not counting that, I would have to say senior year of high school, I read Dracula for the first time. I started really getting into Gothic literature, the history of the Gothic, the history of folklore. Do you have any ideas for a semi-regular ongoing series with Checkmate Lincolnites and seemingly Witchfinder General done? Feel free to include rejected ideas in the response. Witchfinder General's not done. I just feel like I'm kind of constantly in danger of playing the joke out. So I really only make an episode when it just makes me like die laughing, right? The sort of the concept that is. I think if I did more series, I'd kind of like them to be more kind of narrative, like Frozen 50s Man, except with shorter, more frequent episodes and more of like a tight focus in actually like spoofing the tropes of historical fiction. Like, for example, I've got a script for a web series written now that's a spoof of like historical romances, like Outlander and Bridgerton and Rob Roy, these sort of adventurous, swashbuckling kind of bodice rippers. And it's very much the similar type of like humor as Checkmate Lincolnites and Frozen 50s Man, where there's, a character named Lord Slave Tradington. The source of his wealth is deeply mysterious, and a lot of fun stuff like that. So, the trouble is that it's like very expensive to do narrative stuff. So it's really only like a sustainable thing if it like gains a really passionate fan base that's going to like turn out consistently. So, I would say if that's like, we can sort of conduct a sort of, little poll right now. Let me know in the comments if that sort of thing interests you. Okay, and here are your questions from youtube.com, whatever that is. What stories have you found in your research that you would love to tell, but couldn't find enough information for a full video or keep it relevant enough to the topic at hand to delve into? So, anxiety and mental health during the Civil War. That's a very interesting topic, because when you actually delve into the letters and sort of the newspapers and stuff that people were writing at the time, they were really freaked out and very anxious by the level of violence and discord that was happening around them. And this is like very much not what the boomer historiography, kind of a Ken Burns, Ron Maxwell sort of portrayal of kind of brotherly conflict really kind of like tells us, right? It's like those guys in those movies are all stoic and dutiful and like they're doing what they have to do, and and they really don't think twice about kind of the morality of what they're doing. But the reality was that people were extremely anxious and really sick in the head about what was going on. And that's something, there's a little section of it I came across in a Charles Royster book a long time ago that I thought like, oh, this is super interesting, but I really haven't been able to find much information beyond that. So as is, it's just like not enough for a full video. When you're doing character acting, and especially for a piece like the Sudbury Devil, do you find that doing the accents and speaking in period appropriate ways helps you get into character and enhance your performance? Or is it the opposite, where adapting to an alien manner of speaking and behaving makes the role that much more complex to settle into? Or maybe a bit of both. My friend Brandon F. here, author of The Corpse War of 1793, a wonderful new book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I'm waiting on my physical copy to come in the mail, but I believe it's available on thenativeoak.org if you're interested in redcoats meet zombies. I certainly am. So Brandon, good question. I would say that it definitely helps. to kind of get into character. The only kind of trouble is that improvisation is really hard, right? Unless you like really are a huge dork about it. And I'm a huge dork about it, but I still find improvisation hard. When I'm writing historic dialogue, I really have to like think about it and choose words very carefully. It's a very slow process. Now that it's been a good while, what takeaways / opinions do you have on Checkmate Lincolnites? You know, I wish I'd broken up some of the longer, kind of later episodes into like shorter videos. I think, you know, if I could do it again, I would do like a 20 episode run rather than a 10 episode run. Really just as a matter of personal greed. You know, it would have been much more profitable. I think that if I had done that, then I would have had enough from ad revenue. You know, thankfully the Patreon has always been really strong relative to the size of my channel. But I think what I would have gotten a lot of money from ad revenue that would have made like a pretty significant, you know, sort of impact on my life. And, you know, and just kind of knowing me as well, I think a lot of that would just go back into the channel. And I think like if I had that nest egg, I probably, you know, at this point probably would hire, you know, Veronica Payton, my producer, as like a full-time employee. You know, and kind of start to like build a little bit more of like a structure around my small business. I know a lot of people look at the view counts on those videos and think I was a fool to step away, but you know, honestly, you know, the channel continues to grow without it. And I think my analytics tell a bit of a different story, you know. Checkmate Lincolnite still gets regular, steady amounts of views, but these days, you know, most people find the channel via the like long feature-length video essays like Ecological Indian and Frankenstein. So, you know, that's really kind of Checkmate is just like not really how people are finding the channel anymore. What educational YouTubers are you watching or most excited to see blossom in the future? Please elaborate on any you might wish to do a collab vid with. So I don't really watch much educational YouTube anymore because it's kind of work. I watch my friends, like I like watch my friends to see what they're up to. But yeah, I don't know, like kind of edutainment, pop history is just like not like I just haven't watched that stuff in many years now. You know, my partner really loves trash tube, she calls it, drama channels about the Rogan sphere. So I watch a lot of that. And as far as people that I've, the sort of channels that I am watching that I do like, and that I would love to collab with, because yeah, I mean, again, I have sort of collabed already with so many of the channels that I love, but I would say probably Kaz Rowe, Glutenberg Bible, Joel Haver, and Climate Town, probably the people I'd like to collab with the most. What's it like working with a composer on your work? Do you and Dylan bounce ideas off of each other, or is it more in his hands? I'm super excited for Vampires of New Orleans. It's Dylan, spelled with an I, you fucking idiots. No. So it's very much a conversation, right? I am a very kind of musical filmmaker. I cut to music a lot of the time. Most of the music that I just listen to in my day-to-day life are film soundtracks, right? Like melodic film soundtracks. So I have a very strong vision of what I want, and you know, Dylan shares my sensibilities and he brings his expertise. You know, he and I actually did a live stream a few years ago talking about kind of our creative process. I think it was around the time that the Sudbury Devil OST album got released. So you should watch that if you want to, you know, learn more and hear from him. How would you change the Constitution? I would pass an amendment outlawing slavery as a punishment for a crime, and I would also make lobbying illegal and basically excise money from politics. Been reading Edward Abbey and did a college course on the American perspective on wilderness and national parks. Have you read Abbey? What's your opinion of direct action and anarchist literature such as Abbey's Eco Defense, A Field Guide to Monkey Wrenching? Is it LARP, ineffective, or does it have a place within activist efforts? So I would love to do an Ed Abbey video with Carl Casarda. You know, he's the Abbey scholar. I've read Eco Defense, but I haven't read his novels. A while back, a viewer in Canada sent me a whole box of Earth First zines, which go over Abbey's life and work in a ton of detail. This is not even like, I mean, there's literally like right down there is like an entire box of these going back years. Incredible artwork. And and some really, really great articles from kind of a lot of the people kind of active in the Earth Liberation movement in kind of the 90s and 2000s, kind of what I would consider kind of the heyday of American environmentalism. Margaret Killjoy has a couple articles in here, a young Margaret Killjoy, which is, kind of funny. I'm sure some of you know her. Rod Coronado, who's sort of the, legendary indigenous animal, liberationist. It's interesting, Killjoy actually talks about about Abby, and her opinion is not super positive. I think mainly because of his questionable stance on immigration and general misanthropy. Personally, I don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that's just me. So direct action is the opposite of LARP. Historically, it is the single most effective way to frustrate the designs of the powerful. Direct action gets the goods, quite frankly. And it doesn't always have to be illegal, right? I mean, there's many forms of peaceful, not that direct action, because direct action, as I define it, is often property damage, which is peaceful. Let's sort of define our terms here, right? Like pouring sand in the gas tank of an excavator is not terrorism. That is laughable, right? But I suppose we should say kind of legal direct action, very much a thing. Pressure campaigns, for instance, are, at least in principle, supported by the First Amendment. It's a perfectly legitimate form of activism. I've participated in several pressure campaigns myself, just like as a foot soldier. I think that I would never do any kind of illegal sabotage. I would never encourage anybody else to do it. But I kind of dislike people who kind of clutch their pearls at the idea of it or when it happens. I think that's just a profoundly regressive mindset. If on some level we didn't accept the validity of illegal direct action, we would still have monarchies, right? And I would also kind of play kind of devil's advocate to kind of all the kind of punk rock, battle jacket wearers out there, and just also defend kind of the unsexy forms of activism. I think when, canvassing or outreach and that kind of stuff. Because I think when you kind of, I think ideology can often kind of get in the way. I'm not an impossibilist, right? I kind of just care about what works, right? It's once activism becomes about okay, how do we take this specific issue and there's lives at stake. How do we save these lives? At that point, it becomes very simple, right? And something like, illegal sabotage can kind of, might be kind of a tactic that could be used to save a life. Also, knocking on somebody's door and saying hello, would you consider voting for Measure 1B5? Also can be a life-saving measure, right? Even though it's not punk rock. I don't really care. I don't care if people think that I'm a lib, or if people think that I'm a, fucking eco-terrorist because of the, whatever. I don't care. All I care about is okay, is this effective? Is this going to save somebody's life? And once it kind of becomes about that, then things get real simple. Hey Andrew, just finished filming a short horror film with my friends and had a blast. In your opinion, what would be 3 things when starting out that would be most beneficial when filmmaking? Well, first of all, that's great. Congratulations. It's an amazing, feeling when you get a film in the bag. I really only have one piece of advice for you, which is that you learn by doing, right? You just got to keep making shit. Start small, start with something that's manageable, then continue to sort of test your capabilities and your limits with each project. And you really just need to you'll fail and shit won't work. But if you're just making short movies with your friends, then the stakes are not high, right? Don't get lost in the conceptual, masturbation of waiting for the perfect conditions to make a movie. You just have to do it. Sorry if this is too personal, but what are your thoughts on your own gender and sexuality? I'm not talking about labels so much as how you, if at all, experience and express them day to day. I know it doesn't have a lot to do with your channel, but because of your video with Esoterica, I assume you mean the Frankenstein video, not that you ship me and Justin. And your recent work in general, I would be interested to hear your perspective. So I'm as far as gender, I'm a pretty boring cis man, pretty comfortable with that. Not likely to pull an Abigail Thorne on you guys. As far as sex, maybe a controversial opinion, but I like it. I enjoy it. I'm a very sexual person. I don't really like this lowercase p Puritanism that seems to have kind of risen among the youth, especially in kind of the media that they consume. I think it's like, I don't think it's healthy. Obviously, it would be a different story if it was capital P Puritanism. In that case, I'd be all for it. That would be awesome. Where do you fall on the Luddite to accelerationist spectrum? I'm of two minds. In my heart of hearts, I think the agricultural revolution was a mistake. I think that any society with an agricultural mode of subsistence is necessarily imperial and hierarchical, and I think that basically all of our problems come downstream from that. But at the same time, I think that you can't put the genie back in the bottle, and I think Kaczynski was wrong. Any kind of reasonable, practical view of the sort of problems caused by technology kind of demands technological solutions. Like, I think that obviously things like renewable energy and precision fermentation, which is a totally scalable, like 20th century technology that involves basically brewing food in like vats. It's like brewing, but you make food out of microorganisms. I think these technologies are the only thing that can really sustain a population of 9+ billion people without destroying the planet, right? The only way out is through, right? We can't go back. We can't go back. That said, I'm increasingly very concerned about the role that technology is playing in all of our lives. I don't think this is like a moral judgment of the technologies themselves, but rather like a horror at who's at the wheel, who's pushing these technologies into daily use and who's benefiting from them. I'm going on this esoteric New England tour next year with Justin, and one of the things that I'm really excited about with that is that when you're when you're taking a historical tour, you don't have to worry if the person teaching you history is AI generated, right? And I'm increasingly looking for escape hatches with my filmmaking and with my educational work that's either in person or that involves physical media, or that is sort of on alternate online platforms like my website, selling Sudbury Devil and other films on my website, that is just not determined by an algorithm. You've spoken at length about the places where you lived, Massachusetts, North Carolina, New Orleans, and how that made you very interested in history and local culture and how they influenced you as a person. I'm wondering if your familial heritage had a similar effect. I notice all the little objects that you have that'd be very common in a certain Southeastern European country. I've become more interested in my heritage recently, to the extent that we're kind of planning a sort of family trip to Croatia. My family is the Serbian minority in Croatia, and sort of to visit the sort of village where my mother's side of the family came from. And there's some crazy stories, from that village that have been kind of passed down. I mean, in World War II, especially, the Italian fascists came through, and there was one instance where they came through and they murdered every man in the village, including, I believe, my great-grandfather and my great-uncle. And then, then these women and children were just like left in this like mountain village to fend for themselves while this like war was raging around them, the biggest war in human history. Just incredible stuff, crazy stuff. Do you think your online community has become less diverse when it comes to people with different political opinions being present among your followers compared to the early Checkmate Lincolnites days? I think in terms of political views, unquestionably, but I think in terms of social, cultural, and economic backgrounds, it's much more diverse, right? Look, in the early days, like in 2020, when my channel first got big, Atun-Shei was like just white male sword dudes, almost exclusively. Now I think we've got a lot more women. We've got a lot more people of color, a lot more queer people. I think that it's only less diverse if you're sort of, depending on kind of what kind of diversity you're interested in, right? Why have politics come more to the forefront in the videos being made on the channel? I did like the Checkmate Lincolnites videos and other historical videos on the channel, and that's mostly what I subscribed for. But recently I've been more dismayed by the more political tone the channel has taken. I know you have your own journey and it's your production, but some people want to watch things about history and media without being confronted with politics or how the world is killing itself. So could you tell us, viewers of the channel, if politics will keep being at the forefront or if it will perhaps take a bit more of a back seat? When I started my channel, I was under the misconception that history could be apolitical, and I really have early fans of mine to thank, namely the Lost Causers and Nazis who believed in me very early, and they disabused me of that notion, right? I got up on YouTube and I said slavery is bad, and to me that was something that was so obvious that it transcended any kind of ideological alignment. But what I discovered was that a large portion of the populace found that to be irredeemably biased. And you know what? They were right. It is biased. So now what I've done is try to be more upfront about my bias, to examine my bias, and just lay it all out on the table. The only way you could look at Checkmate Lincolnites and conclude that it's not political is if you already agree with his politics. To the right, it was always fiercely political. And again, they were right. There is no such thing as objective history. The historian always puts themselves in their work. Even something about even decisions about what you're spotlighting, what era you choose to study reveals bias, right? It reveals authorial intent. And I think that refusing to engage in the moral dilemmas of your subject is a choice, right? And most often it's a choice that serves to reinforce and legitimize the status quo. For example, if you use the traditional term slaveholder rather than the newer term enslaver, you're not maintaining objectivity by trying to not be woke. You're choosing a side. You're making a choice. A slaveholder merely holds his slaves. He doesn't seem like such a bad guy. And then as far as what you said about how people want to just watch something chill and have it not be a bummer, well, I think because my videos are entertaining, you've confused them with entertainment. Escapism is not my game. A lot of people got pissed off by my Frankenstein video because it went to some dark places that made them uncomfortable. Well, maybe an essay about the greatest work of horror in the English language should be horrifying, actually. Maybe it should be challenging. I'm not here to fucking coddle you, and I never have been, not even when I was apolitical. Was going vegan hard? I have always admired vegans, vegetarians, but struggle to imagine being one myself. Not at all, not at all. Unless you live in abject poverty or you have a freakishly rare combination of allergies, going vegan is trivially easy, right? I mean, I guess obviously this depends on what your definition of easy and hard is, right? I'm not saying it's like, if you're thinking, oh, like parallel parking is hard, okay, then maybe going vegan will be hard for you. But as far as actual sort of difficult, truly difficult things that are demanded of you in life, no, it's so easy. And as far as the allergies, I'm not talking about almonds or soy or whatever. I'm talking about a truly 1 in a million weird combination, debilitating combination. I was at a wedding recently, and I was catching up with a friend who I haven't seen since I went vegan, and he was just I didn't bring it up because I never bring it up. They always do. And I was just getting the fucking vegan option, right, that they had at the wedding, and the guy was just I really respect you vegans, but I've got an almond allergy, so there you go. And I was like, okay, man, well, I haven't had an almond in a year and a half, so, but whatever. Okay. And then he was just then he just leaned in real close and he was just be honest. How much of your protein do you get from almonds? And I just laughed in his fucking face. This is the level of nutrition knowledge that the public has, right? You know, these people think that we're going to keel over from protein deficiency when 95% of Americans don't get the minimum recommended amount of fiber, right? And it's literally killing them. It's giving them heart disease and fucking killing them. Learn what a chickpea is, you idiots. Any particularly interesting bit of history that you've come across during research you've done for Vampires of New Orleans? You'll have to see the movie to find out, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys and all of your support, especially the folks on Patreon whose names are about to flash by your screen. Anyway, Happy New Year. Hope 2026 sucks a little less than 2025 did. See ya.